Good morning. This is Elisa Rodriguez, Deputy Commissioner for the Domestic Violence Division. Thank you so much for tuning in today's webinar. Today we're going to walk through a few topics. First, I'll give you a quick overview of the changes DFSS has made to its RFPs, building on what I shared with you at the TA session, which I believe was about a week ago or more. I've lost track of time. Second, we'll share some key information, including dates, deadlines, resources, and advice for you as you prepare your applications in the upcoming month. Third, we'll provide you an overview of all of the RFPs, and we'll go through some of the questions to give you a general sense of what direction we're taking, but please note that we'll also have an FAQ available after the session. Along our way, we'll do our best to address these questions, but make sure that you give us your questions before the deadline, and we'll talk about what that deadline is in a few minutes so that we're able to provide you as much guidance as possible. So just like I talked about at the TA session, our mission at DFSS was revamped, and it was changed so that it could align with our strategic framework, which was created in 2006. We have a refreshed mission and department-wide priority, as you see on the screen. So our mission is working with community partners. We connect Chicago residents and families to resources that build stability, support their well-being, and empower them to thrive. Our priorities are to deliver high-quality programs, to collaborate with community partners such as yourself, to inform the public of the resources and the programs we have so that they have access to them, and then also to be a good steward of the resources that we allocate to our community and receive from our funders as well. So as you know, DFSS launched a strategic framework in early 2016 to transition our department to a more outcome-oriented and data-driven approach for delivering services. At its heart, the strategic framework is about placing greater focus on the quality of services and client progress, which are outcomes, as opposed to the number of clients or units of services delivered, which, as you know, are outputs. The first phase of the strategic framework was internal and focused on setting priorities and outcome goals that make them a core part of our department's work. Now we are in the next phase of our strategic framework, and we are incorporating the framework into our contracting and engaging the service provider community to improve these outcomes. The large majority of DFSS's work is achieved through partnerships with service providers in the community. So unless our outcome goals are embedded in our partnership, we won't be able to achieve these goals. So we're relying on our partnership with you all to really make this work so that the services we provide have a really robust and positive outcome for the folks that we serve. Over the past several months, we have worked towards developing RFPs and contracts that are more focused on these outcome goals. You will see this work reflected in 1, our RFPs, and 2, our selection criteria, and 3, the application questions for the CDGA process across all of DFSS. We've changed these documents for a few reasons, which are captured on the left-hand side of the slide. We want you to use the RFPs. We want to use the RFPs and contracts to do the following things: focus on outcomes, share our priorities and plan for tracking performance improvement, and create a better flow of information on best practices, high-quality services, and what we know about the population we're trying to serve. We're going to talk through our changes for each of these items, but in general, we try to do the following: focus more on outcome goals and less on activities, make selection criteria and application questions reflect our priorities, and ask questions that give us better, more specific information for funding decisions. You'll see within the RFPs that there are opportunities for you to tell us what you think works and does not work within our domestic violence portfolio. You can learn more about these changes by checking out the FAQ resources and the TA session slides that will be made available on DFSS's website. But a quick overview is reflected here. First, we refreshed our RFPs to make sure that our RFPs put outcome goals front and center. This isn't just about focusing on activities we want to do, but focusing on what we're trying to achieve together for the people that we serve. We also updated our selection criteria to focus on results and best practices. You can see the names of our categories in the middle, and each RFP contains the criteria and scoring in depth. We also changed application questions to reflect all of this and help us gather information to make good informed decisions. You'll see some new questions within the RFP. You'll see some changes that were not there before, but be mindful that these changes are really there to help us improve the work that we're doing and really learn about, again, what is working and what needs to be improved within our portfolio. The next slide is the selection criteria that has been developed. So there are key changes. There's a new category and names to point values that are reflected with each of these priorities. We're emphasizing key concepts within our program. So we're understanding the target population, we're looking to use data to improve services, and we're really building capacity to deliver on a service component. We're closely tying the selection criteria to the application's questions to provide greater clarity on how we assess these applications. So you'll see that the categories are the strength of proposed program. We're really looking for applicants that can deliver appropriate programs to the target population that are in line with evidence-based field practices. The second criteria is program performance, outcomes, and quality. Here we're looking for an applicant that has really strong past performance and is capable of collecting data and using that data to manage performance. The third category is organizational capacity. Here we're looking for an applicant that has the appropriate staffing pattern, a system that helps them track their progress, an applicant that has processes and other organizational capacities to really execute this work and deliver on its services. The fourth category is reasonable cost, budget justification, and leveraging of funds. Here we're looking for an applicant who is fiscally sound, who has the opportunity to leverage other non-city funding for this program, because as you know, as much as we would love to be able to fund you at 100%, we're unable to do that. So we're really looking for an applicant that can, use our money, in a very strategic way and bring to the table other funding to help make the program as robust as possible. So we want to talk a little bit now about the goals that we have set. We touched this a little at the TA, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I wanted to just show you what our role and priorities are within the domestic violence division. I also wanted to kind of show you what our outcome goals are. These were the 2017 goals, and as you can see, some we've really rocked and others not so much. These are the goals that as we start to work collaboratively together, which we will, you all will have an opportunity as a community of practitioners in the domestic violence field to provide input. Are these the right goals? Are we tracking things that are really important? Are we looking at outcomes that really improve and make people safer? So rather than spending a lot of time on this, I just wanted to kind of show you what we're looking at now, but what we will be doing through our active contracting process in 18 is really taking a deeper dive together to make sure that we're on track in terms of the goals that we want to be able to achieve within the domestic violence division. So now we're going to transition over to Mira. She'll introduce herself in a minute, and she'll do that deeper dive into the actual application RFP.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mira Raja, and I am the project coordinator with the Division on Domestic Violence. I think I know many of you, and hopefully we have some new applicants as well. So thank you for joining us today. As I go, if you have questions, please take time to type them in, and we'll, my partner here will check every couple of minutes, so I will try to answer them as we go. So now we've gotten to the part, Elisa has given you a brief overview of our strategic framework and why we made the changes that we made to the application. And I'm going to talk to you now more specifically about when you're looking at your RFP and you're answering questions, what are some of the different questions that you're going to be getting? For example, you'll have a question of, please describe the evidence-based and/or best practices that support your proposed program. So this is something new that we haven't asked you before, but as we move, again, from output, you know, what you do, how many case management sessions you have, how many service plans you develop, that's an output. We want to look at outcomes. We want to see how are clients better for having been served by your program. And obviously, to get to that place, we want you to be using some kind of evidence-based practice, some best practices that are in the field, you know, that are going to give you the results with clients that we're looking for. Another question that we ask that is in line with HUD goals is, how does your program strengthen the problem-solving skills and increase the self-sufficiency of a victim? Everyone who has worked with victims, we know that one of the best things you can give a victim is confidence in her ability to make decisions and a feeling of self-sufficiency. One of the things that we'll ask you in the application is about program performance. So for example, if you're currently funded by us for DV services, we'll ask, in the last 12 months, how have you done on your deliverables, on your performance measures? Have you met them? For new applicants, of course, you don't have that existing information, but you can tell us, given the scope of the program, how are you going to be able to achieve the desired results and outcomes? Some more specific selection criteria changes. This is, again, a new one, that we're going to ask you to please include any existing annual report you have or a study that you've done, any kind of documentation that you have that reflects the results or the accomplishments of the program. Again, this comes to address outcomes versus output. When it comes to outcomes, how do we get there? We get there through data, correct? So we're going to ask you, how does your agency ensure quality data collection, data entry, reporting, performance management, evaluation of program outcomes? Some of these are tedious: data collection, data entry, reporting. However, without them, we don't have the basis to then move on to the next step, evaluate the data, and get better for all of us. One of the huge ways in which we measure outcomes is through the evaluation of services survey. And this is another thing I know, sometimes it's not the easiest thing when you're serving someone in crisis. And of course, we have guidelines about when to administer the survey, but it's an important tool for us and for you to see how we're all doing in providing services. And things like, we ask questions on the survey. This is a survey that we issue, and we ask questions of the client. You know, did you feel supported? Do you feel more confident in making decisions? Do you better understand the legal process? Things like that. That tells us, that's what we have for outcomes right now. So these are really important. We're also going to ask you, have you made changes to your model, your organization, based on data collected? So we're kind of looking at it two ways. Are you operating based on best practices? Where did you come up with what you do? And also, once you've collected data, maybe if it's client satisfaction surveys, whatever it might be, how have you collected data and then used that to say, okay, you know what, maybe we can change this up because this is what our clients have indicated. We're also going to talk about, and this I'm so happy that this is in the RFP this time, because as Elisa said, we rely on your collective wisdom, on what all of you have seen. You are the ones out there in the field providing services. So this is an opportunity for you to tell us, okay, this is what we do, this is what you asked us to do, and maybe why don't you guys fund this service? Or why don't you look at this outcome that we see here in the field and you guys don't know about? So this really gives you an opportunity to give us feedback. All right, so let me see if we're taking questions at this point. I see a few questions. The first question I see In Alicia's presentation with the slide that had percentage for outcomes, 85% of delegates will meet all PMs at 85% or higher. What is a PM? Great question. Seems obvious, but it's not obvious. PM is just a performance measure. So on your work plan, we give you several deliverables, right? Like how many clients have you enrolled, how many service plans. The deliverables that we chose out of that set, and we said, okay, this is the meat and potatoes of this program. This is what's really important. We turn those into performance measures. So that's what a PM is. Then we have the next question on page 5 of the CDBG description. Can you provide more guidance about provide, where applicable, group counseling and facilitated by a trained and qualified counselor? What do you mean by trained and qualified? Great question. I think the question is not, we know what group counseling is. In the DV world, we look at trained and qualified counselor. Minimum competency is that you have the 40-hour training. Now, if above and beyond that, if you're a social worker, if you're a PsyD, if you're a counselor, fantastic. But minimum competency is to really provide, and this goes across the board, to provide any services to our victims, you have to have the 40-hour training. Okay. So moving to the next slide. So the new application questions, again, that you might see that help us to make more informed decisions are, what are the challenges and critical needs facing your intended population? Again, this is what we already talked about before. Describe the evidence base and/or best practices that support the proposed program. Please tell us 1 or 2 times your agency made changes based on the data. So this change from outputs to outcomes is not going to happen overnight, but we're moving towards it slowly, and we'll move towards that by the questions that we ask you. So, okay, what is included in a complete application? I think those of you who have applied before know that a resume for everyone providing the services, proof of 40-hour training, as we talked about, that's the minimum competency, and a job description. And this is for everyone who is going to provide services that you put on your work plan. We may not, CDBG might not be paying for their salary, but it doesn't matter. We want to understand the totality of your program, all the people that offer services to these clients, because we know that we're only paying a fraction of what it takes to run your program, but we do want to see everyone who's involved in the program. Obvious, complete answers to every question. You have a 4,000 character limit per question, so it doesn't have to be complete sentences. As long as you get your point across, bullet points are fine. That all works. And of course, you might want to check your answers first in Word for character count, because my understanding is that you don't get an indication. Is that correct, Julia? That you get an indication? No, you do not. So you may, if you put in 6,000 characters, we won't see the last 2,000.
You'll just get an error message.
Okay, you'll get an error message. So that's good. That gives you something. Okay, so now we move specifically to this initiative and the Division on Domestic Violence and what we fund. So I want to make this clear that Division on Domestic Violence funds community-based agencies such as yourselves to provide assistance and advocacy to adults and teens who have been victims of domestic violence. And domestic violence is inclusive of physical, sexual, or emotional abuse, but it's in the context of an intimate partner violence. Those of you who are familiar with the Illinois Domestic Violence Act know that there are other populations that are covered under the IDVA. At this point, intimate partner violence is what we cover. Now, again, in the application, if you find that you're also getting different types of abuse that's covered under the IDVA and we don't cover it and you would like us to cover it, by all means, let us know that in the application. That helps us. If there's a population that's covered under the IDBA and we're not serving them, we want to know about it. So we're going to just take a little bit of a closer look at what is intimate partner violence, so that it's very clear. It describes physical violence, sexual violence, stalking, psychological aggression, which includes coercive acts by a current or former intimate partner. The aim of this behavior by the abuser is to exert power and control over the victim. An intimate partner is a person who's had a close relationship that has one or more of the following: emotional connectedness, regular contact, ongoing physical or sexual contact, identity as a couple, knowledge and familiarity about each other's lives. Again, it's important to remember that the relationship doesn't have to have every one of these dimensions. Intimate partner violence can occur between current or former spouses, boyfriends, girlfriends, dating partners, sexual partners, and of course, IPV can occur between heterosexual or same-sex couples, and it doesn't require that there has to be sexual intimacy. So I like this slide because it gives you a nice framework of who can be served under this initiative. So the services that we ask people to provide, or the services that we're willing to fund, fall under 6 model types. Counseling services to victims of domestic violence. Clearly the star in that model type is the counseling. Legal advocacy and counseling services to victims of domestic violence. This model type, you're going to have legal advocates, so they're the star of this model. Third model type, legal services to victims of domestic violence. So we've got attorneys on board on this model type. The fourth model type, supervised visitation and safe exchange services. These are services that are provided when a court orders that contact between the custodial and the non-custodial parent is dangerous, but that the non-custodial parent and the child would benefit from a relationship with each other, so this facilitates that. The next model type is resource and information advocate services. These are people who basically act as a guide at the Central Domestic Violence Courthouse at 555 West Harrison. We have people coming in who may not know what they want, what they need, what's available, and RIAs provide that basic service as a quick service to tell them where to go, what they need, how to get it. The last model type is our newest model type, the multidisciplinary team services. This is a partnership between social service agencies, the Chicago Police District, probation, the state's attorney's office, and this is to provide coordinated services to victims, especially those victims who have had multiple interactions with the police, to try to assist them. So even though I described differences between the model types and the services that they provide, there are shared goals across all the model types. These may not be written down in the work plan, but this is the framework, really, of what you're doing. The first one, provide emotional support to the victim. I just can't emphasize that enough. You as the service provider may be the first person that someone is talking to about their abuse. You may be the first person who supports their view of the situation, but this is just not acceptable, what's happening to me. So emotional support is core, and it's core for outcomes for victims. Just tied right in with that is a respect for the victim's own emotional process. So we can't impose what we think is good for the victim. She knows her life, or he knows their life better than we do, what works, what won't work. So our job is to do the best we can based on what the victim wants for herself or himself. Obviously, not every model type does this, but everyone should have, all providers should have a basic knowledge of the rights and the protections that are available to victims under the Illinois Domestic Violence Act, because even let's say you're a supervised visitation provider and then something happens between the custodial and the non-custodial, you want to be able to provide that information to your victim. Everyone should have a basic knowledge about how to petition for an order of protection, and if you don't know it yourself because your model type doesn't do that, you've got to have a strong partner who would immediately be able to assist someone explain those services to them. Same train of thought, either you do the legal services yourself or you've got a really strong partnership. You can refer someone to get legal services such as, orders of protection, custody, divorce, spousal support, etc. Those are all things that happen in a victim's life, and stopping the violence may be the first aim of our programs, but we want to give them comprehensive support for all the other needs that they have, which brings me to the next slide, the next bullet, referrals to other needed services such as shelter, entitlement income, health care, food, utility assistance, long-term counseling. The Chicago Metropolitan Battered Women's Network had done a study with victims who had been in service for a while, and one of the things that they wanted more of was long-term counseling. So that is a very important part. There's counseling that happens during the crisis, and then there's also counseling that happens in the longer term. And if you don't provide that yourself, you need to be able to refer someone to that. And I'm repeating myself, provide emotional support and respect to the victim, because those really are just the core. If you do nothing else, if you provide emotional support for a victim and you respect her process, you've actually done something. So now we're going to go into each of the model types. So for each of the model types, we're just going to we'll have an overview, and then what are the performance measures for each of those model types. So our first model type is counseling services for victims of domestic violence. A change from 2017, or excuse me, from 2018 this year, where we were saying you can only serve adults. We've realized that we need to include children in that, because you do provide counseling services to kids, provide emotionally supportive crisis counseling, victim rights and legal protections under the IDVA, how to file for an order of protection, to create a victim-led service plan, and then to make progress towards completion of the goals, case management, referring to other needed services. Then we come to assist 50% of clients to complete a confidential evaluation of services surveys. That, at this point, the evaluation of services survey is what we have to measure outcomes. So it's important that you get half your population so that we have a good sample size to really see how well are we doing. And at this point, the way we record your results, you send us copies and then we put them into a database. We are working, hopefully, in 19, let's have our fingers crossed here at the table, that there will be some less burdensome way to do this. Perhaps clients will be able to enter their answers directly into a database. We are experimenting and thinking about those type of things. So hopefully there will be really good news in 2019 about how to do that, because right now the process is burdensome. You have to make copies of the surveys because you need to keep your originals in the file for when the monitors come to see you. So you have to send us copies, and then we have to have manpower on this end to enter it. So we're looking for a better way, rest assured. All right, so now we're going to talk about the performance measures. So this is really the way in which we measure at this point, and we are looking for better performance measures, more performance measures. Right now, this is how we evaluate. How well is your program doing? So based on the survey, the first 3 bullets are based on the survey. How many clients know more, what percentage know more ways to plan for their safety? They know more about available community resources, and they felt supported in making their own decisions. And again, this is very important. You might be, as the worker, your program might be the only place where the victim can come in and say, this is how I feel, this is what I want, and feels confident and supported in those decisions. Also, we want your clients, they may come in, and we know that this is a cultural thing as well, but clients may feel, and it could be the result of the abuser telling them, you know, if you would just stop doing X, Y, Z, we would be cool. So we want, through the involvement of your program, we want them to understand, to finish services or during services, know that, you know what, I'm not responsible for this abuse. And then we have some, you know, basic deliverables that we're looking at, like how many people, what percentage of your clients, 75%, have to develop a service plan. And that's, they may need housing, they need entitlement income, they might need legal services. And we're hoping that 60% of those clients who do develop a service plan show some progress towards at least one of their goals. And the last bullet reflects the importance of the first three bullets with the survey, is that if you don't get 50% of your adult clients to complete the survey, we don't have that good of an idea of what the outcomes actually were. Okay, we're going to look at our questions right now. Okay, will you share a copy of this presentation via email? Let me ask, I think everything is going to be posted, and I think we will be giving you information at the end of this presentation about where to find this PowerPoint.
Yeah, the PowerPoints are all posted on the DFSS CDGA website, and so you should be able to download them there. They're also posted on the, I think they're actually posted on the DFSS YouTube channel, but you basically go to the DFSS CDGA website. It will be posted, the link to the YouTube channel will be posted there. If you send me an email, I can send you personally the link, and we usually get it within 24 hours of the webinar.
And that was Julia Talbot, and you'll be hearing from her a little bit later when we get into the nitty-gritty about how to use e-procurement and things like that. Next model type, legal advocacy and counseling services. So not surprising by the name of the model type is that legal advocacy is the star of this model type. Again, you're providing emotional support, crisis counseling. Again, you can serve children under this, assuming that you provide counseling services. You may be working with the mother on certain legal protections and working with the children on other things. Creating a safety plan, knowing her rights under the IDVA, explaining how to file for an LP, and the star of this model type is that you can actually, a court advocate accompanies the victim to court for emotional support, clarification of court processes. This is so valuable to a victim to have someone there. The court process is intimidating for anyone, and then you have someone who's been a victim, is most likely in crisis when they're coming to you for an OP, to be in front of a judge. The entire process is intimidating, confusing, so the accompaniment is extremely valuable. We get back to our nuts and bolts of creating a service plan, helping a client to progress to some of those goals on the service plan, case management, referral to other needed services, and we come back to our survey, helping at least 50% of clients to complete the survey and send copies of those surveys back to us so that we can put them in the database. Our performance measures on these, the first two are the same, the percentage of clients who know more ways to plan for their safety and know more about available community resources, and those come from the surveys that you turn into us. Also, those who felt supported in making their own decisions. This one, because you are going to court with the client, you want her to better understand what happens at court. Hopefully the advocate is able to provide clarity of that. We want 50% of clients seeking an order of protection with your help, that at least 50% actually are granted the OP. And we will actually be having a meeting with all of our providers sometime in 2018, sometime this year, to look at, is 50% a reasonable goal, a realistic goal? Is it higher? Should we make it higher? Should we make it lower? But we will be getting your feedback this year. Then we go back to 60% of clients who develop a service plan show progress. Same as the other model types. Same as the other model types, you have to get 50% of your clients to complete an evaluation of services survey. Third model type is legal services. Obviously, star of this model type are our attorneys who can actually get in there in court, represent the client. So we're starting off with our same base of services about emotionally supportive crisis counseling if needed, help her to create a safety plan as needed, rights and protections under the IDVA, and then we're actually providing victims with legal advice and legal counseling because we have attorneys to do that, assist the victim with the paperwork to petition for an OP, and victim needs, of course, are larger than just getting an OP. It leads to involvement in family court, legal resolutions, stalking no contact orders, U visa, T visa. So because you have attorneys in this model type, they're able to assist with all of that, intervene in civil or criminal cases or with law enforcement on the victim's behalf, advocate on the victim's behalf, refer to other needed services. Again, 50% of your clients are going to complete a survey. You send copies of the survey to us, and we're able to look at outcomes. So our performance measure for legal services, this is somewhat familiar by now, the percentage of clients who know more about available community resources, the percentage who felt supported in making their own decisions. This one, we're going to measure the percentage of clients that were given information on how the laws can provide protection, and also, because you have an attorney with you, hopefully you better understand what happens at court. This model type, the way we are currently measuring it is that 50% of clients who file for an OP are getting an emergency order of protection, and 30% of clients who file for an order of protection get a plenary order of protection. Those are the percentages we have in place right now. We will definitely be seeking your input through the year to see, are those percentages correct? Do we need to tweak them? And of course, 50% of adults completing the evaluation of services survey, and the dot that got left off was then that you send copies of those surveys to us so we can enter them into the database. Okay, our next model type is supervised visitation and safe exchange services. These are visitation services that are ordered by family courts, I believe. It's court-ordered visits. The court says that, as I mentioned before, there should be visitation between the non-custodial parents and the child or children, but it's not safe for the custodial parent because there's a history of domestic violence there. So the Supervised Visitation Center acts as a safe place where the non-custodial can visit with their child. So the first bullet, accept court referrals, create a victim-led safety plan if needed. You may not need to do that. The two parents may be at a place where that's worked out, but these situations change, they're volatile, so you may need to come in and help them create a safety plan. You're going to have a visitation plan and facilitate court-ordered visits between the non-custodial parent and the child. You have, this model type requires that there are facilitators of the visit so that they are monitoring the supervised visit between the non-custodial and the child to make sure that the behavior is appropriate. We don't want the non-custodial parent saying negative things about the custodial parent or trying to pass messages. We don't want those type of things to happen. That's why they're monitored. We're also facilitating if it's a safe exchange, where it's deemed that really all we need is a safe way to exchange the child between parents. The visit doesn't have to be supervised, then your center supervises that, facilitates the safe exchange to make sure that it's done within the time allotted, and that getting the child back to the custodial parent is done in a safe way as well. Always you have that background capacity to provide crisis counseling as needed, to explain the Illinois Domestic Violence Act, to explain how to get an order of protection. Then specifically now, the next few slides are going to talk about the fact that because you will be responsible as a provider of supervised visitation and safe exchange services to develop and implement security measures and protocols that meet the safety needs of your clients and the community. So when we talk about safety for this model type, one of the basic ways that you ensure safety for the custodial parent and the child is using staggered arrival times. People do it differently with the non-custodial or the custodial parent arriving first, but you really want to decrease the likelihood that they're going to come in contact with each other. So they come at different times to the center and they leave at different times. If it's appropriate, staff may actually escort either parent, depending, and you do need to be flexible and look at each case and implement policies and procedures based on the case or your facility, but that you may have to escort one or both of the parents out of the facility. There are limitations and needs that we have to have. The visitation space really has to serve certain purposes. So we want the facilities, if you apply for this model type, we want you to have a separate waiting room for the custodial and the non-custodial parent. We would like you to have a separate entrance and a separate exit for the custodial and the non-custodial parents. We talked about before, staggered arrival and departure time. If your program does not have that in place right now, your facility is not configured this way, or you don't have policies and procedures in place, you have to explain to us and make us confident that by the time the contract begins, you will have these in place. You have a plan to make this happen. And here are some bonuses that in order to ensure physical, auditory, visual separation, if you have separate parking lots, that really works. We also, if you have security cameras, that's another strategy, that's another added tool that adds value and increases safety. The performance measures for this model type, not surprisingly, the percentage of clients who know more about available community resources, the percentage of clients who feel supported in making their own decisions. And this is, we're going to look at the percentage of clients, and we do look at this through the survey, the percentage of clients who feel safer from their abuser while at the center. We want that 80% of scheduled supervised visits and safe exchanges are actually attended by both the custodial and the non-custodial parent. So if you have a situation where the non-custodial is not showing up or the custodial is not showing up, we're hoping that you have strategies to encourage them, that you work with them, find out what is preventing them from coming to these visits and to overcome those. And of course, we want 50% of your adult clients, and this of course includes custodial and non-custodial parents. We would like them to complete an evaluation of services survey. Okay, excuse me, I'm going to get some water. I'm not used to talking this much. Our next model type is resource and information advocacy services. These services happen all at 555 West Harrison. And as I said, resource and information advocates, we call them RIAs. They are they are informed tour guides at 555 West Harrison. They provide brief services. We're hoping it's like 15 minutes, around that. And we want our RIAs, and our RIAs have historically served a large number of victims per year. They're serving as an entry point guide at Central DV Courthouse for victims who are not familiar with available resources. Many, many, many times, victims show up at 555 West Harrison because someone has told them, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's a friend who knows something about DV services, they said, oh, you need to start at the courthouse. That's where you need to go. And then someone comes in and they're really not sure where they're supposed to go, what type of services are they looking for. It's confusing, it's intimidating. So the RIAs come out, they proactively engage victims. They're not waiting for victims to come to them. They are going out and looking for people who look like they're not sure what's happening. They have the basic information about everything, that's all the services that are available at court, give them a brief overview of their rights under the IDDA, talk about what options here are at court, what options are outside of court, and sort of get a plan together of where you're going to go, direct victims to services inside, outside of the courthouse, and they can begin to assist them. They don't, generally the RIAs don't have the time to fill out the paperwork, and really there's no need for them to, but they can certainly assist the victims while they are filling out the paperwork to get an LP. So performance measures with this really they're all outcomes. They're both outcomes, because how many clients they see, that's based on how many clients are at the courthouse, what they refer them to, again, based on client needs. We can't predict that. We do want, though, that 80% of clients who interact with a RIA will be able to come away from that transaction saying that, you know what, yes, I am better informed about my legal options, and I do understand what happens in court better than I did before. Our last and newest model type is multidisciplinary team services. Programs that apply for services under this model type need to be able to accept referrals from either the 3rd, 4th, Southwest area, and 14th Chicago Police Districts. The way this model type works is that referrals come in from police districts who are participating in this initiative, and I know the hope is that eventually this protocol will be in place in every Chicago Police District, that officers are trained to do a brief risk assessment on the client, and this is someone that the police are called to intervene in a domestic violence situation. So they fill out a brief risk assessment, and then they send it to the social service agency that they are linked with to provide these services. So they will do the police officers do the victim risk assessment and then send it to the social service agency, and it's up to the social service agency to assess the victim risk and prioritize the immediacy of the follow-up call and the frequency of how long they're going to follow up with this service. We ask and we hope that when you get a referral as an MDT provider, you're going to be able to contact that victim within 24 hours, because clearly the situation was severe enough that they need assistance. You provide victim with safety planning over the phone, emotionally supportive counseling, review all the services that are available, the resources that are available, and the partners in this are the Chicago Police Department, the State's Attorney's Office, probation, our division, and also community members to improve the procedures and protocols that are in place. So this next slide, it looks complicated, it's really not, but we do have certain performance measures that the multidisciplinary team themselves have come up with, in that when you receive a referral from your partner district, that you're going to reach out to every one of those victims. If you've classified someone as high risk, that you'll contact them within 24 hours. We look at the number of victims that you actually reached. We look at the number of victims that once you reached, they accepted services and who declined services. These are all good things for us to know. The number of victims that received safety planning, review of options, counseling, and other assistance during the call or a follow-up call. And then we also track the number of victims who are referred to different services, counseling services, legal advocacy, legal services, shelter, etc. So going back over all the model types, highlighting some of the key changes in program requirements, as I had alluded to before, for 2018, we had said that with counseling services and legal advocacy services, you could not include children, but we have realized that yes, you should be able to include children in those services because you are providing a valuable service by doing that for children. We had also been somewhat particular about if you are awarded, or even when you're planning for your award, about the way in which those funds are spent. We were targeting that 80% of that award be spent towards personnel and fringe costs. That is being relaxed. Again, of course, we want to see that the budget covers the program expenses. We don't want most of your award going to indirect costs or other initiatives, but it's a little more flexible. If you can provide justification for why you're spending the money the way you are, in light of the fact that we know that resources are shrinking, we want to give you more autonomy about how you spend that money. And as I alluded to before, we are trying to allow for electronic completion of the survey by client to make this. Manpower is going down everywhere, so this would be a move towards efficiency. And those of you who have been with me for a while know that we've been talking about this for a while, but I'm very hopeful that this may happen soon. So the next, I think, 1 or 2 slides is just general advice things to keep in mind as you fill out your RFP. Highlight client outcomes as a result of participation in your program. And you will, it's not like we're not going to ask you that specifically, we do in the application. So your program is making a difference in client lives, and so we're seeking to better positively identify what positive changes happen for clients as a result. And I think that this is something that all of DV service providers are looking at, as more and more we're asked to justify our need for funding, correct? So we have to be able to show how we have changed people's lives. Again, you will have an opportunity to give us feedback in the application about services that you provide that we don't measure, outcomes that we don't measure, and on ideas just on how we can improve, how we can help you improve the services that you provide. So basically, how can we increase your capacity? Please remember, another thing to keep in mind, this is important. Remember is that your application is going to be reviewed by at least 2 reviewers. And while the reviewers are definitely trained on each model type and they're going to know they'll know everything that are in these slides, the second reviewer may not be a DV expert, may not be someone who has been either providing services or funding DV services. They may not know your particular program. They may not know some of the acronyms that we might use as DV providers. They might not know some of the acronyms that you use in your model type. So your application should create a complete picture of your program and the services that you offer, and it should be able to be understood by someone who is not an expert in domestic violence services. So let's just throw out an example. I've been saying IDVA, I've been saying RIA, I've been saying MDT, all of those things. spell that out, or at least the first time you say it, so that someone who's not sure of what that means is not going to have to take the time to find out what it is, or just say, I don't know what that is. I don't know what they're talking about. Another application tip, self-evidence. Start early. Register into iSupplier, eProc as soon as you can. Read the entire RFP in advance, because there are some differences. You're not just going to be able to cut and paste what you did last year, maybe some of it, but certainly not all of it. Think about your application approach. For example, if you're applying for other RFPs, different projects, how is this application different than the other application? Review the narratives and the application questions closely, because they are different this year, and we want you to be well prepared to respond. And look at the selection criteria. It's a nice thing that it's transparent, and we ask you questions, and then we tell you how are we going to score this application? What are the things that we're looking for? So you're in a better position the more carefully you review the selection criteria. We talk about the 4,000 character limit. Make sure you respect that, and that you have answered the question fully. And the attachments that are required, those are necessary. I've talked about this ad nauseum: the resume, the job description, the proof of 40-hour training, because the staff is important. The people who are providing services are really important, and we want to see that they have experience in providing DV services, that they have the minimum competency of the 40-hour training. That's basic, and it's going to hurt your application if you can't show us the quality of your staff. Take advantage of the resources that are available to you. The city's website has training and resources, and I am always available. My contact information is going to be here. Email is the best, better than the telephone. You will get an answer from me if you email me. All right, I'm going to take a minute here to see if we have any questions. Okay, the question is the character limit with or without spaces? A character includes a period, it includes a space, it includes a comma, it includes anything. So 400 characters. Or, excuse me, 4,000. I don't want to cause a panic. 4,000, I reiterate, 4,000. Okay, I think that was the last question. So now I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Julia Talbot, and she is going to have really good information for you about working in e-procurement.
So a lot of what I'm going to say here is just a reiteration of what Mira has already said. But in terms of, working in e-procurement, I want to just say up front, this is a new system. It's citywide. We're all learning, and we're all running in, and that also means that, no system is without its bugs or glitches. And so while we have had some experience and have been able to remedy any number of glitches or bugs that we've run into, there's always the possibility that we might run into additional ones. That's one of the reasons that we're really encouraging people to submit early, and to avail themselves of the resources that the department and the Department of the Office of Budget and Management, OBM, have set up to help you guys in completing your application. If you have experience in the e-procurement system previously, you might have known that we had a thing where if you wanted to make two applications to the same RFP or the same program type, that the system wouldn't allow you to do so. You had to set up different email addresses. That, I believe, has been fixed. You should be able to make as many submissions per RFP as you like. I can't imagine why you'd want to do more than one or two personally, but you should be able to make as many submissions as you want, and you should be able to use the same email address to do so. If you're running into problems with this, be sure to call me or to call the OBM hotline, the e-procurement hotline. at 312-744-0358, and that's at the bottom of this screen.
Excuse me, this is Mira again. I'm just going to jump in here real quickly. I will do anything to help my delegates. Those of you who have worked with me know that's true. If you call me with an e-procurement question, the best I can do is to write it down or refer you to Julia or the Office of Budget and Management.
Right.
I myself have not even been in that system. I don't know what it looks like. I'm going to have to learn it in order to evaluate your applications, but at best, I can take a message, refer you to Julia. So I just wanted to put that out there.
So that hotline number is really the place to go. As we've discussed, there's a 4,000 character limit. As Mira says, that includes everything. I'm pretty sure if you exhale really hard, that might be a character as well. But it's punctuation, it's spaces, and it's actual letters and numbers. The system will not tell you why they will. If you put in more than 4,000 characters, it will just give you an error message. It won't tell you that you're over. So we really encourage people to do their answers in Word and count them via Word. I think they has a character counting function, and put it in there. Or just know that if you get a really random thing saying, error message, or your submission is being spit back, that might be the reason. One of the functions of the e-procurement system that I actually like is that you can, quote unquote, submit your application and then later pull it back and amend it or change it or update it or add more or take stuff away. And you can do that up until the due date of May 31st at 12 noon. And so this is a nice way of kind of placeholding yourself in the system. You submit, you want to, of course, submit your completed application, but given that this is a new system, given that we have a lot of people who are going to be putting in applications, I think it's a really great idea to kind of get into the practice of doing that submission and then pulling it back. We're not going to look at anything until that May 31st due date. So we're not going to open up your application and be like, oh, look, they haven't finished. We're gonna just sort of be like, oh, look, they're in the system. Thank goodness somebody's applying. So you can submit and you can pull it back, and I think that that's probably a good strategy for a number of reasons. One is you avoid the rush. We want people to submit early. This system hasn't been tested for the volume that we're going to put into it on May 31st. And I don't want you to be the people that if the system crashes at 11 o'clock, and I'm not saying that this is going to happen, and I certainly hope it doesn't, but I don't want you to be the person that is affected by that kind of stress. So we're really pushing people and telling people that we think you should try to submit early. If the system is going to be crowded, you might try to submit early or try to submit at a weird time, just so that you know that your stuff is going to get in. And also, give yourself time to have this application take a long time to upload. Once that application closes at noon, if you're not in there, there is nothing we can do about accepting a late application. The only way we can accept a late application is to re-release the entire RFP. So a late application is not going to be accepted because basically because there will be people who manage to get their applications in, and it's not fair to make them reapply, which is what we're going to have to do if we have to re-release an RFP. I think so I would say, definitely try to get your stuff in early. I would not leave this to the last minute. The department has 27 unique program RFPs that we're doing. There are 4 or 5 other departments in the CDGA system. I don't think anybody has as many RFPs as we do, but there's a lot of volume. We're expecting hundreds and hundreds of submissions. So I would say, get your questions, start early, finish early, submit early. If you really change your mind at the last minute, you can pull it back, but at least you have something in the system, that you liked well enough to submit at some point, right? Let's see, the other thing is, yeah, make use of the E-Procurement hotline, figure out what the problem, there's some pretty good, we have the DFSS CDGA website, which you can access off of the DFSS City website. You go to alerts and it says CDGA applications. There's all manner of links to tutorials, to webinars, to PowerPoint presentations that should help step you through or answer some basic questions. If you're experiencing something that you just don't understand, call me, call the procurement hotline, email me, email the procurement hotline. Their address is all over the application. If you have a program question, call Mira. So that's kind of what I have to say about working in e-procurement and going forward. So here we go. The application questions became available to you on April 16th at 9. Questions for the FAQ should be submitted to Mira by May 4th. And the applications are due May 31st at 12 noon. If I could hear you, I would make you say it back to me. I might Sharpie it on the inside of my arm.
And I did want to point out that because this is a new system, normally the application would have gone online May 1st and be due May 31st, but you've been given an extra 15 days. So
right, because we understand that there's a learning curve and we just want people to have a little extra time to master this. Also, we did rewrite all of the scope, so we thought it's better this way to kind of push it out a little early. So this is a slide about addendums. So when we do our FAQs, for instance, we're going to upload the FAQ and put it on every. We're going to put them, insert the FAQ file as an attachment to every RFP. If you have already started your application, this will require you to do an addendum when you go into e-procurement. And the addendum is you're going to acknowledge that you know that we have amended your application, or not your application, but we've amended the RFP. So this is sort of just a screenshot. You're going to get you'll go to log in, you'll go to your work list, you'll see this acknowledgement required, as in that upper bubble. You're going to go to the review changes. To review the changes, it will say, in this case, it will say, we've actually already done one amendment for all of our RFPs because a key file was attachment was missing. And that amendment basically says, the amendment is to upload the file that everybody needed to do to the work plan. When we do the FAQs, the amendment will read something along the lines of, this amendment was, the changes that we uploaded a file with the FAQs so that everybody has it. You have to accept the changes, or you have to acknowledge and accept the amendment. And at that point, your application and everything that you've done, all the work that you have done in the prior RF, in the unamended version will be brought forward into that amended version, so you won't lose any of your work. So that's what you're gonna see when when we do an amendment. If you hadn't logged in and you haven't started your application, you're not going to see it. You'll just get the amended version. You won't have to acknowledge it because that's all you've seen. As I indicated from the DFSS webpage, here are some sort of key links and stuff that I thought was important. If you go to the DFSS webpage, there's the link to that. That's the first one. If you have questions on registration, which is you're having a hard time getting into the iSupplier into your iSupplier account, you're not exactly sure how to apply for one, you would email the e-procurement support at cityofchicago.org. If you need technical assistance, you already have gotten your iSupplier account and you've logged in, but you're running into issues, you're going to go to that OBM GMU at cityofchicago.org, or you're going to call the hotline at 312-744-0358. The Office of Budget and Management has some training materials that we have a link to. These are videos, webinars, PowerPoint that will help you get started in manipulating an application through iSupplier and e-procurement. you know, just basic stuff about how to log on, how to, you know, reset your password, also how to start an application. I think there's actually also some other information in there about sort of like how to do, you know, down the line if you already have a contract, how to voucher and all that kind of stuff. So this brings us to the end of the webinar. We thank you so much. If you have questions about program-related questions, you of course call Mira at 312-746-8719, or you can email her because she prefers to be emailed. You can get a hold of me at juliatalbot@cityofchicago.org. My phone number is also 312-746, and I'm totally spacing on my phone number, 743-1679 actually, but it's in all the RFP documents. It's relatively easy to find, or you can email me and say that you want to call me and I'll tell you my phone number.
So Julia, it looks like we have a question, and the question is the RFP already available on E-Procurement?
Yes, it is. It was released on April 16th. Here's some questions about.
These are all older questions. So, all right, I think we are good. Again, don't despair if you think of a question 5 minutes from now, because you can always ask myself or Julia. We will get back with you. And thank you all for your interest in providing services to victims of domestic violence in Chicago. It's a needed service, and we appreciate your interest in this population. Thank you so much.